So yeah, that is the interior doors. Exterior doors also have locking mechanisms exterior to the handle. Most interior doors, the lock is in the mechanism, like the doorknob. You push the doorknob to lock it, or you twist the little lever thing inside the handle. Exterior doors also can have typically external locks to that, like deadbolt locks or slide locks that are secondary to the main lock on the door. Now, next section I want to talk about, and probably when we got into this, I started doing things in order, and I wanted to deal with the interior finish work, but realize after the frame is done or the envelope gets built here, you're actually going to go over and probably do the plumbing and the electrical and all the other wiring before you would do the finish work. All right? Because the finish work is the drywall, which we'll get to, but we haven't ran the electrical yet. So theoretically, we're going to talk about interior finish work right here on your list, but realistically, we actually, let me see, would go over here and do the plumbing and electrical first, because you don't want to put the drywall up before you do any of that. All right, so the interior finish work is all of the stuff to finish the shell or the envelope, as well as if there's any other kind of other finish work. So what I mean is once you get the frame built, now you can go in the house, and now that you've decked the roof, the good thing is you've got guys that can work inside, and they are being protected. So now if it is raining, they can still do the finish work in the rain because they are literally in the structure. They're inside the building. They can put the drywall up. They would, put the carpets down. They would do any of the trim work, like if you had a high-end home and you wanted crown molding. There's also this thing called chair railing, which keeps the chair from hitting the wall. It's, if you've seen it, it's about 3 feet up from the floor. They would put casing around the doors, the inside of the door. They could put the floor molding on. All of the appliances, all of the countertops and the counters, all of this would be considered interior finish work. Now remember, this is not supposed to be a specific thing to make you guys carpenters. So understand that we are lumping a bunch of stuff here together, that you may have a carpenter in to do cabinets different from a painter. All right, so I'm just lumping this all together so that you understand that there is such a thing as an interior finish is different. Another issue you have is ventilation. You've got ventilation and moisture control depending on where you're building. If you're building in Mesa, Arizona, you definitely may have a ventilation issue or a moisture issue, meaning that you may want to humidify the house so that you're not in the dry area. If you're living in the south, you may want a dehumidifier. My furnace has a humidifier in the furnace, so we can mix it in here with the HVAC. So on my furnace, we have a humidifier so that it actually puts water in the air for the house. So with the HVAC, once again, these are in the plans. He is going to determine how big is the house, so that's going to tell me how big the furnace is, because I don't want a small furnace if I've got an 8,000 square foot house. Matter of fact, in some houses, they may have 2 furnaces. You may have 2 systems. I've got a system for the upstairs and a system for the downstairs, which in the long run could be really kind of neat. I almost said cool because I don't want to confuse it with the fact that you could keep the downstairs warmer and the upstairs cooler while you're sleeping without having to keep the whole house cold, and vice versa in the winter. Maybe you want the upstairs warmer than you want the downstairs. You don't want to have to heat all of it if you're going to spend most of your time in the bedroom. So it is possible to have 2 systems. And one of the things they will ask you, by the way, when you order your first home inspection, that's one of the questions. Is there 2 heating systems? Because that's a bump in the price for an inspector. You know, yeah. Question? Boy, it's not picking up really well on the question. The question is, a home inspection, is it based on square footage? Yes and no. The price of most inspectors are going to say up to 1,900 square feet is X amount of dollars blank across the road. So if you're 1,700, it's still going to be $300. If you're 1,900, it's still $300. A lot of them will have structured or layered kind of pricing. What I mean is they'll say, okay, 1,750 square feet and below, it's $275. 1,750 to 3,000 might be $350. Above 3,000 is costing you more. The reasoning is why? Yeah, they spend more time there. You know, they obviously spend more time looking at two HVAC systems in an 8,000 square foot house than they would looking at 1,400 square foot and one furnace with no HVAC at all. So there is a cost when you start elevating. Now also, there's add-on costs. So what I mean by that is, even in a 3,000 square foot house, they may assume there's only one furnace. So let's go back to my example. Between 1,750 and 3,000 might be one price, but then they're going to say, and if you have a second furnace, add another 50 to that elevated price, because that elevated price only takes into consideration the increase in square footage. Now we have a second unit to look at, so it's much more. One of the guys I deal with is like that. It's like 1,750, I'm thinking, and I don't know why. I think it's just a nice number for him. 1,750, and below is a price. 1,750 to $3,000 is a second price. If you've got a furnace, you would add $50. All right. Then above 3,000 is another square footage. Now on the bright side with him, 3,001 is the same as a 20,000 square foot house, because he doesn't have any delineations above that. And I've often said, hey, whatever happens if you have to do like a 9,000 square foot house? And he has said, I guess I'll worry about that when I get to it. Maybe just the fact that you want to go in and look at a 9,000 square foot house may take up that. So I don't know how I got onto that. How did I get onto that? Oh yeah, dealing with the heating and cooling. Those are all going to be laid out in the plans. Once again, in the blueprints that got approved by the plan reviewer. It's going to show where the furnace is. It's going to show the size of the furnace. It's going to show where the duct work is going. It's going to show where you plug in the furnace. So that's going to be part of the electrical we're coming up to. I can't beat it enough. It's all based on those blueprints, and those blueprints are on the plan review. All right. So now we get to these two. You've got the plumbing and the electrical. Once again, these are all laid out in the blueprints. So you've got the plumbing, and the first thing you guys have to know, and this was part of the site preparation, is it city, water, and sewer, or is it well and septic, or could be a combination. I listed a house a couple years ago that was city water, but on septic. There was no sewer out there yet, but they had run the water. Well, okay, when they run the water, they had billed the guys at what they call a tap-in fee. When they run a sewer, they're going to charge you for that too. And they don't, I don't even know how to say this. To run the line from your house to the city sewer, all that cost is on you, and you have to pay to tap into their city sewer. All right? So when it comes to plumbing, there's all kinds of things, and once again, I am not a licensed plumber. None of you guys are a licensed plumber, and the point of this course right here is not to try and make you a licensed plumber. But just remember, you've got all kinds of issues with plumbing. I mean, all kinds of issues. You know, you've got just water issues that we think about, like, oh, my kitchen sink. But don't forget, you've got outdoor faucets, like if you want to run sprinklers. What if you have a sprinkler system in your yard? That's an issue you have to deal with as a builder and a designer of homes. Home inspector has to also, that's another question Ron asks, is there a irrigation system? Because there's certain ways to check that. Then you have to deal with the toilet, which is the sewage system. That's still plumbing. You know, you got to put water in the toilet and take the sewage out. And there's all kinds of now new code to basements. Like, for instance, I just learned something the other day that a toilet in the basement actually has to have a lift station to get all that stuff up, which I guess theoretically makes sense if you think about it. Shit doesn't roll uphill. That's not how the saying goes. It rolls the other way. So to get it uphill, we need a lift station. There's all kinds of other issues. What about a water heater or water softener? Water heater. The new what's the new thing right now? What's the new thing in as far as water heaters? Yeah, the tankless water heater. Now, I don't know as from a plumbing standpoint if it's much different, but you still have to account for that water heater being somewhere in the house. And so you've got the city water coming in, you're going to heat the water, you're going to take that out to the rest of the house, all right? And you've got all kinds of other things. You guys seen a buddy of mine's got a really big house. He's got this really cool manifold system. Imagine, if you will, a long stick. The water comes out of the water heater into this long stick, and the stick, it's almost like a flute. Picture a flute. You got a long flute with the holes in the top, and then out of each hole comes a separate line that goes to a separate location. In line is a valve that allows you to turn off the water to that particular area. It's a manifold system. So if you're working, let's say, on the upstairs toilet, but you still want to have water in your kitchen sink so that you can do the dishes, you literally can go down to that manifold, find out which one water supply, and just turn off that water supply to that toilet, and all the water still going to the rest. Of course, there's a main water valve, so you can turn everything off in case something happens. But I mean, it's a pretty cool system. I don't know if that's code now or not. I think a lot of builders are doing that because there's a lot of reasons. One, it's much simpler to see. You go down and you see this system instead of all these pipes going out to all of it. You know, the old way was to one pipe coming out of your water heater, and then it branched in that direction and branched in that direction. But the problem you had is what I was just saying. Water went down in one area, you had to turn the water off, and that hurt the whole area, which theoretically could cause problems to like an ice maker where you run water to. You get a bubble in that, it may jack it up. So if you got a manifold system, you could turn off the upstairs water, let's say, turn off the kitchen sink, or I'm not sorry, well, you could have an upstairs kitchen, the bathroom sink and the bathroom toilet, but still leave all the bottom floor water going, okay? Electrical is very much the same way. Now remember, these all will be prior to putting the drywall on, because you're literally going to drill holes in those frame 2x4s to run the wire through. That way when you put the drywall flush against the frame, there's nothing there that make a bump or a lump or keep it from going flush because you've run the wires through the drywall. I mean, I misspoke. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Say one little word wrong. You drill a hole through the frame or the vertical structure to run the wires through. Now, in commercial building, we have steel frame. I don't know if anybody uses it in houses, but the good thing about the steel frame is a little more sturdy, but it has pre-cut holes that you, in the middle of it, if you look at it from the side, it's got big, long oval holes cut. That is so you can run all kinds of stuff. You can run your electrical through there. In the residential, what usually happens is they build the frame up, then they go back and drill a hole with a drill bit to drill the hole, and then they'll run the cable through there, and they'll run the electrical through there, or they may drill 2 holes and run cable through one and electrical through another. But all of that is known because of the blueprints. Electrical gets run, and see, there's an old saying, and I think Electrical gets run before the plumbing because you don't want to have water present while you're dealing with electrical. You don't want a chance that the plumbing is leaking while you're wiring electric. So I think the electrics run first, then the plumbing after that. Of course, if you're the plumber, I guess you could be touching bad wire while you're dealing with water, but that's what you get for going last. All right, in order to not make this too long, I'm going to stop this right here.